Go outside tonight after dark. Walk away from the nearest streetlight, past the edge of where the glow from your windows reaches the pavement, past the point where you can clearly see the features of anyone who might be walking toward you. Keep walking. Pay attention to what happens inside your body when you do this. Your hearing sharpens. The sound of your own footsteps becomes louder than it has any right to be. Something at the base of your skull sends a quiet but unmistakable signal that the world around you has changed, that you are now operating under a different set of rules, that you should be paying closer attention to everything you normally ignore. This is not fear exactly. It is something older than fear, something that has been running continuously in the human nervous system for hundreds of thousands of years. And understanding what it actually is will change how you think about every night walk you ever take again. Because I need to establish something crucial right from the start. What you are experiencing when you walk alone at night is not anxiety, not irrationality, not a personality flaw in people who feel it strongly. What you are experiencing is one of the most precisely engineered threat detection systems in the biological world. A system so finely calibrated and so densely documented in neuroscience literature that the researchers who study it consistently describe it in terms of reverence, not pathology. The question is not why you feel it. The question is what, exactly, is doing that to you, and why it was built this way in the first place. Let us begin with the structure responsible for most of what you notice. The amygdala, a paired almond-shaped structure buried deep in the medial temporal lobe of your brain, is the primary processing center for threat-relevant environmental information. It receives direct input from your sensory organs before that information reaches the cortex, meaning it is evaluating your environment for danger faster than your conscious mind can form a thought about what it is detecting. Research published in the journal Nature Neuroscience established that the amygdala responds to threatening stimuli in under 14 milliseconds, a response time roughly 10 times faster than the speed at which you can consciously identify what you are seeing. When you walk into darkness, your amygdala does not wait for a confirmed threat. It begins operating on uncertainty itself. Darkness is not a neutral sensory condition. For the amygdala, darkness is a category of input that historically correlated with predation risk, and it responds to that correlation the same way it has responded to it for the entirety of human evolutionary history. What does that response actually do to you? The first thing that happens is a measurable expansion of sensory sensitivity. Research from the University of Toronto demonstrated that people in conditions of perceived low control, which includes darkness and physical isolation, show significantly heightened auditory processing and a statistically documented tendency to perceive ambiguous sounds as intentional and directional rather than random. Your brain, under the influence of low-level amygdala activation, is not passively receiving sound. It is actively scanning incoming auditory information for patterns that match known threat signatures, footsteps, breathing, the sound of movement in spaces that should be still. A branch settling in wind registers differently at night than it does at noon, not because the sound has changed, but because the brain processing that sound has. The second thing that happens is spatial. Your perception of the geometry of the environment around you shifts in ways that researchers have been measuring for decades. A study conducted at Ohio State University found that people consistently overestimate the steepness of inclines and the distance to visible landmarks when they are in states of mild threat-related physiological arousal. A path that you walk every single day becomes subtly unfamiliar after dark because your brain is allocating attentional resources toward threat detection at the expense of spatial familiarity processing. The neighborhood you know completely becomes slightly strange. The street you have turned down 100 times acquires a quality you would struggle to put a precise name to. This is not your imagination constructing something false. This is your threat detection system doing exactly what it was designed to do, and doing it with extraordinary efficiency. Now, here is where the story becomes something more complicated. Because the neurological changes that occur when you walk alone at night are not exclusively aversive. Many people who walk alone after dark regularly, runners, night shift workers, people who simply prefer the quiet of late hours, describe something that sounds less like fear and more like a particular kind of clarity. I have read accounts of this in clinical psychology literature, in first-person surveys, in dozens of documented studies on nocturnal walking behavior, and the consistency of the description is striking. There is a heightened sense of presence, a feeling of being unusually alert and alive to the immediate moment, that people who walk alone at night report at rates significantly higher than they report after walking the same route in daylight. This is not a contradiction. It is the same neurological system producing both effects simultaneously. The mechanism here involves what researchers call the locus coeruleus-norepinephrine system, the brain's primary alerting network. When mild threat arousal activates this system, it does not simply increase anxiety. It increases the gain on all incoming sensory information, sharpens attention, suppresses background cognitive noise, and produces a state that clinical neuroscientists describe as focused arousal. You are more present at night because your brain is more present at night. The thoughts that fill your afternoon walk, the planning, the self-monitoring, the background noise of social cognition, are partially suppressed by the same neurological state that makes a snapped twig sound significant. Your mind is quiet in a particular way that it almost never achieves under ordinary conditions, tie-ins. And that quiet, for many people, is something they seek out deliberately without ever understanding the mechanism behind it. There is also the question of what darkness does to social perception, and this is the dimension that surprises most people most completely. Research from the University of Michigan found that people in conditions of visual obscurity, in rooms with dimmed lighting, or in outdoor environments with low ambient light, demonstrate measurably reduced conformity to social norms and significantly lower self-monitoring behavior. The reason is straightforward. Social self-regulation depends, in part, on the perception of being seen. When visual feedback from others is removed, the cognitive systems that regulate social performance relax. You are not performing for an audience that can no longer clearly see you. And something in the nervous system knows this and responds accordingly. The solitude of a night walk is not merely physical solitude. It is, in a documented neurological sense, a kind of social silence that most people never experience during daylight hours, when the visual field is populated with faces that are always, at some level, evaluating you. What does this produce? Researchers studying the psychological effects of solo nocturnal walking have found consistent reports of what they describe as reduced rumination and increased present moment awareness in participants following nighttime walks, compared to matched daytime walks on the same routes. The brain that is scanning its environment for genuine threats does not have the attentional bandwidth to replay your failures from 3 years ago. It is too busy listening. The very system that produces the low hum of alertness you feel at night is, simultaneously, the system that silences the internal monologue that occupies so much of ordinary waking life. This is a real effect with real neurological underpinning, and it is the reason that people who walk at night tend to describe the experience as clarifying in a way that is difficult to explain to someone who has never tried it. The evolutionary logic behind all of this is not difficult to reconstruct. For the overwhelming majority of human evolutionary history, darkness represented a genuine and specific category of danger. Large predators with better night vision, rival groups with tactical advantage in low visibility, terrain that required careful navigation without the benefit of artificial light. The nervous system that survived those conditions was not the one that relaxed at sundown. It was the one that became more alert, more attuned, more responsive to the full range of sensory information available. You are the descendant of people who made it through the dark, and the neurology that helped them do that is running intact in your body right now. It is not a malfunction. It is not a vestigial quirk. It is a system that has been refined by selection pressure over a period of time so long that it predates anatomically modern humans entirely. There is a particular phenomenon that researchers studying nocturnal psychology describe as the threshold effect, which occurs in the first few minutes of any solo night walk. Physiological measurements of heart rate, cortisol levels, and skin conductance all show an initial spike in arousal immediately after a person moves from a lit interior space into outdoor darkness. And then, in the large majority of subjects, those measurements stabilize. The nervous system, having scanned the immediate environment and found no confirmed threat, settles into a state of sustained low-level alertness rather than escalating panic. The threshold is the moment your brain realizes it can handle the conditions it has entered. And what comes after that moment is the state that nightwalkers describe: the sharpness, the quiet, the unusual quality of simply being somewhere after the rest of the world has gone to sleep. None of this is obvious. None of it is what you think about when you step out your front door at 11 at night and start walking. But it is what is happening, in the precise and documented language of neuroscience, in a brain that is doing everything it was built to do. The instinct to stop, to listen, to track the sound of your own footsteps against the pavement, and know exactly where you are in space. The sense that this hour and this solitude belong to you in a way that afternoon never does. That is not imagination. That is ancient, calibrated, and real. Have you ever walked alone at night and noticed something shifting in the quality of your attention? A change in how the world sounds or feels around you? Share your own experiences in the comments below. I go through every single one, and this community possesses a remarkable ability to describe these phenomena in ways that no academic study has ever quite achieved. And if you want to understand another way, your brain transforms completely ordinary environments into something extraordinary, one that most people have never examined closely enough. Another exploration of this subject is prepared and waiting for you.